Welcome to the Livin'Sky Podcast, a show about raising connected, resilient kids in a world that often forgets what they need most. I'm Lena Livin'Sky, a pediatric speech-language pathologist, holistic feeding specialist, and a mom, here to help you understand your child's body, behavior, and biology in a whole new way. Each episode brings you simple, practical tools to support healthy eating, development, and family connection without the overwhelm. Thanks for listening. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Livin'Sky Podcast, your go-to source for healthy living and valuable insights into child development and family health. I'm your host, Paulina Livin'Sky, or Lena for short. As an SLP specializing in feeding, and most importantly, a mom, my work in holistic health reflects both my professional experience and personal journey. For over a decade, I've passionately studied and researched this field. Now I work with parents of children with chronic disorders, helping them heal and thrive. Join me for a mix of solo and guest episodes featuring experts in the health and wellness space. I can't wait to dive in, and also, I have a toddler, so I gotta get going. Let's get the show on the road. Dr. Elisa Song is a Stanford, NYU, and UCSF trained integrative pediatrician, functional medicine expert, and mom of two thriving kids who's revolutionizing children's health. Her best-selling book, Healthy Kids, Happy Kids, and Integrative Pediatrician's Guide to Whole Child Resilience is my absolute go-to whenever anyone in my family gets sick. Through her practice and website, healthykidshappykids.com, she's helped thousands of children get to the root causes of their health concerns by brilliantly blending conventional pediatrics with functional medicine approaches. As someone who's been personally mentored by Dr. Song over the past year, I've witnessed firsthand her incredible gift for making complex health information accessible and actionable for both parents and practitioners. Dr. Song is truly bridging the gap between conventional and integrative pediatrics with her evidence-based, pediatrician-backed, mom-approved approach. Dr. Song, I'm beyond honored to welcome you to the Livin'Sky Podcast today. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks. It's an honor for me to be here, Lena.
Thank you. So I want to know how you got started. What experiences guided your choices to pursue integrative health?
You know, my story, I think, is a little different than many practitioners who have found functional medicine or holistic health, because many practitioners who started in the conventional world, it's really through some sort of a health crisis or health problem that they or their family members experienced, and conventional medicine didn't really have all the answers. For me, it was more, I just, even in high school, was so interested in different forms of healing and spirituality. And so when I went to college, it was just by pure luck that I stumbled upon this flyer for what was this was back in the 1980s, the American Holistic Medical Association. Instantly I was like, what is holistic medicine? And so as a junior in college, I drove myself down to the Santa Clara Convention Center, and really my mind was blown. I heard from folks who were just starting to get known, like Andrew Weil and Deepak Chopra and Joan Borisenko. And I remember coming home to my dorm, not even at that point wanting to be a pediatrician. I was going to be a civil rights, children's rights lawyer.
Wow. Very different.
And I was a public policy, political science major. But then I thought, well, maybe I could do this. So I remember calling my mom at that point and saying, hey, mom, you know what? I think that I might want to be a naturopathic doctor. And she was like, what's that? I mean, no one ever discouraged me, but also back then, no one really in my circle knew what that was. So I was never really completely encouraged. And a lot of people said, well, why don't you go to regular medical school? And you could always do that later. Anyhow, that was my path. I decided to pivot from law into medicine. And really that desire has informed what education I've pursued, and even the practice that I first opened up straight out of residency, starting from medical school.
Wow, that's quite a story. And I feel like holistic health in general, it wasn't really embraced until just a few years ago. It feels like maybe like 10, 15 years. It took a while.
Yeah, it's growing. But if you think about it, I mean, that was like almost 40 years ago, right? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
It was actually called, I remember the NIH had an office of complementary and alternative medicine, right? It wasn't called holistic. It wasn't called integrative. And now I'm really shifting more towards calling it integrative medicine, because really acknowledging that conventional pediatrics has a role in helping our children and us as adults. But also we now know that a lot of conventional medicine is geared more towards symptoms and not understanding root causes. and frankly can have many unintended side effects, especially in kids, the use and I would say overuse and misuse of antibiotics with long-term implications on their gut microbiomes and their gut brain connections and gut immune system connections. So as we start to understand this, we can take what we need from conventional pediatrics, but also know we have to incorporate and integrate other modalities that are not alternative, but really a part of keeping our kids well, including functional medicine, nutrition, herbs, acupressure, essential oils, all the things.
Absolutely. So, what happens to the body when a child takes antibiotics? Why can it be so harmful? Even though it can save lives, there's definitely a space for it, but it's so widely overused, like you mentioned.
I have to remind myself that a lot of parents don't realize, first of all, how overused and misused antibiotics are. As you said, they can absolutely be life-saving. And in fact, even as an integrative pediatrician, I rarely need to write antibiotic prescriptions, but when I do, I know that they're absolutely necessary, which is what I want for all parents. But, for instance, my son, he got this this really bad gouge, from the bottom of a swimming pool 2 weeks ago. And so last week he came to me and said, "Mama, my foot's hurting." And I looked at it and there was a big, round pustule and red streaking up his foot. And it was hot and tender and swollen. And I told my husband, I'm like, we can't mess with cellulitis. This is one case where I know antibiotics are definitely indicated. So I started him up on antibiotics. But what's the problem there, right? Because antibiotics kill all the bad bugs, but they're not specific. They can kill all of the beneficial bacteria that are in your gut microbiome. And frankly, in all of our microbiomes, we actually have multiple microbiomes. Our skin has a microbiome. Our gut microbiome is most well understood, but women also have a vaginal microbiome that's really important, in terms of vaginal health and risk for things like chronic UTIs or vaginitis, HPV, even for pregnancy outcomes and PCOS. And so understanding that antibiotics can wipe out even the good bacteria, we want to enter into antibiotics with that knowledge and then make sure we're doing everything we can to restore the gut microbiome during and after antibiotics.
Absolutely. And you're the perfect person to learn about that from, the microbiome queen, as I think people call you. So can you tell us a little bit about that? What can we do to restore our microbiome health?
Yeah. So, in my book, I go through a whole gut reset plan, which, is really for kids who either have been on antibiotics or, have any sort of a chronic health concern. It's a little abbreviated with antibiotics. But one of the things that's really important that I want all parents and kids to understand is it's not just about taking a probiotic supplement. There's way more than that, right? Because probiotic supplements are only going to be able to restore your gut microbiome if your gut microbiome is in a healthy state. Now, many people talk about the gut microbiome as all of the bugs in your gut, the composition of bacteria and viruses and yeast and maybe even some parasites. But the microbiome is actually an ecosystem. And the organisms that are there is your microbiota, right? And so when we think about this ecosystem in your gut, I have kids think about, growing a garden, right? And if you think about, your beautiful tomato plants and your cilantro and peppers or whatever you're growing as your good probiotics, what do we need that ecosystem in the soil to look like? We need it to be nourished, with the right ingredients to feed the growing plants. So same thing with your gut microbiome. We need your gut microbiome to be nourished in the most appropriate way to feed the appropriate probiotic species that you want back in your gut. So that means eating in a way that's healthful, getting enough sleep, hydrating, getting enough stress relief to optimize your vagus nerve. So that's the foundation. And then, when it comes to antibiotics, yes, you also, I think, do need some supplements just as a safeguard. So probiotic supplements have a role. Prebiotic supplements that can help feed the good bacteria can also play a role. If your child went into the antibiotics already with some sort of a health concern, chances are they have a little what's called leaky gut. So then antibiotics can worsen that. So then you may also want to consider giving leaky gut supplements like glutamine and zinc and fish oils and quercetin. So At the foundation, though, would be, cleaning up the diet and lifestyle, getting in a probiotic supplement and getting in a prebiotic supplement for at least a month or two after the antibiotics are completed. But starting even while you're taking antibiotics. The only thing with timing is that the probiotic supplements need to be taken at least an hour or two away from your antibiotic dose, because the antibiotics might just immediately go and kill the probiotics.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So is there anything else that can be a gut disruptor outside from antibiotics? Is there anything in an environment that can also cause the leaky gut?
Yeah, we have, unfortunately, our world is kind of filled with microbiome disruptors. And that is why, how we live and eat on the whole is really what's most important, because we can't get rid of all microbiome disruptors. They're just everywhere. We can certainly minimize them, but other microbiome disruptors that our kids and we as adults are confronted with include environmental toxins like forever chemicals, parabens, phthalates, heavy metals. We can lower our burden, but if we're going to live in this modern world, we're all going to be exposed on some level. Glyphosate, which is the pesticide found in non-organic fruits and vegetables, and unfortunately, even some organic ones, but glyphosate or Roundup can kill beneficial bacteria even more preferentially than abnormal bacteria. And so, it initially was patented actually as an antibiotic. So parents need to be aware of that. Other factors can include ultra processed foods. So artificial sugars, food additives, this category of food additives called emulsifiers that help to keep our barbecue sauces and our ketchup and salad dressings and ice cream and protein bars together. They should be out, of our packaged foods. And then even there's some evidence that EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies, can disrupt our microbiome. And so supporting reducing our Wi-Fi exposures, and then even psychological stress. So it's not a reality to eliminate all psychological stress, nor is that desired, because we need some stress to function optimally, right? Stress is not a quote bad thing. It's just when it's too much and too chronic. And so we need tools to optimize and manage our chronic stress, because stress has been shown to trigger leaky gut and disrupt our gut microbiome even within 1 hour.
Wow, that soon. My gosh. Okay, so what are some things, because I know you have a whole chapter in the book about the vagus nerve. What are some tools that we can use to help our kids with their stress levels?
Yeah. So, this is one thing that is really important, because, for us as parents, a lot of us don't have great tools to manage stress, to work through stress and come out even stronger and more resilient. I mean, that is the goal. For most of us, our main tool is avoidance, right? I mean,
That's
just
very true.
ignoring it, pretending like it's not there, or just saying, oh, it's going to be okay, and then not dealing with it, right? That actually can build up and up and up, and is one of our most maladaptive tools. And so, if we throughout the day, we're constantly put, if we think about it, constantly put into moments of, fight or flight, even if it's brief, right? We're rushing to get our kids to school on time. We have a work deadline, or our kids have, a soccer tournament or a performance, all these little things that kind of, put us into this stress state, which again can be really adaptive and helpful, because when we have a little bit of stress, it helps us perform. Right? I mean, if we had no stress, no, responsibilities, we probably wouldn't get much done. And also that can lead to apathy, indifference, depression. The problem is we swung the other way with too much, like too many responsibilities, too many things to do. And that leads to anxiety and burnout and anger and irritability, right? But there's a sweet spot where there's just like Goldilocks, just the right amount of stress where we are performing optimally. Now, when we're in that fight or flight moment, we need tools to get us out. And so that is what I want kids and adults to practice throughout the day. And in the chapter called Breathe, which is all about engaging your vagus nerve, there's several tools, but the easiest and most important tool, I think, is to learn how to breathe with our belly. Because when we breathe with our belly mindfully, when we're in that kind of amped up heart rate beating, pupils dilated. We feel like, something terrible is going to happen, or, the proverbial saber-toothed tiger, is in front of us. If we can slow our breathing down and breathe with our diaphragm, that immediately engages our vagus nerve, slows things down so that then we can be more calm and focused and alert and respond in an appropriate and healthy way. So what does that look like? And I'll do this in the office with kids and parents sitting there, because it's amazing how many of us have forgotten really how to breathe with our diaphragm. When you look at a little baby, their belly's going in and out slowly, right? And they're not sucking in their gut and, trying to kind of hold it all in, right? And so we want to go back to that time where our shoulders are really relaxed, not using our shoulders to breathe. We're sitting upright, not kind of slumped over, right? In that tech posture that many of us have. And then we imagine that there's a balloon in our belly that inflates and deflates with our breath in and our breath out. And then I'll have parents put one hand on their chest, one hand on their belly. And as you take a slow breath in, your hand on your chest stays still and the hand on your belly rises, and you hold. And then as you exhale, the hand on your belly completely deflates and the hand on your chest still stays still. And if you do that 5 times, 10 times, you immediately get put into a calmer state. Like I said, your vagus nerve immediately kicks in. And the beauty of kicking in our vagus nerve is that when we optimize our vagus nerve, that improves your gut microbiome diversity and function, independent of diet. Now, that is huge, right? Because we have many of us have kids who are picky, who are selective, and we're thinking, oh my gosh, well, I would love to change their diet and get in, a 25 grams of fiber and a whole, array of fruits and vegetables and whole grains, but they're kind of stuck on eating a few, a handful of foods, right? So I don't want this to be stressful for families. If you just then work on the vagus nerve, you can slowly work on the diet in the background, but working on your vagus nerve will help to shift your child's microbiome, and shifting your child's microbiome actually can start to shift their taste preferences and their willingness to explore new foods, which is fascinating because the bugs in our gut can actually start communicate with our brain and tell us what foods to crave. So whatever way you start working on it, if diet is easy, great. If not, work on, breathing and the vagus nerve. Or there's 5 things in my book, 5 things for microbiome magic that I put in a wheel. And so you can work on any of those other things, whether it's hydration or sleep or movement. So whichever one is going to be the lowest hanging fruit is what I like to work on first, because I want kids and I want parents to feel successful, like they're accomplishing something, start to feel better. And then slowly you can add on the other things.
I agree completely. And I think with the picky eating too, it's so important to work on that connection piece. And this is exactly what this facilitates as well, working together and calming our nervous system down and connecting together and just taking a step back. But at the same time, these tools are working on optimizing your microbiome, which is incredible already. Because I do think a lot of the therapies out there, which are very well-meaning, they do focus on behavior and they do focus on perhaps just extending the food list and bites that you take, which is important. Of course, we want our kids eating and nourishing themselves, but sometimes that's just impossible to start with. And I love this lower hanging fruit that you mentioned. I think it's so important.
And it also can be like if your kids really are picky, or maybe they have sensory issues that are in the way of them, even wanting to try different foods, like different flavors and textures and smells, just don't feel safe to them in the moment. So what we need to do is increase their ability to feel safety. And that's all about the vagus nerve. So if you start with that, not related to food, but just related to let's feel safe in our body, let's slow things down, then that is something that then eventually can translate into, okay, now we know what it feels like to feel safe. Let's remember that feeling as we're even thinking about trying a new food, right? Or even thinking about putting a new food on your plate, even if you don't try it, right? I mean, just little steps.
I'm a huge believer that light is one of the most powerful medicines for our kids and for us. That's why I love Bon Charge. Their blue light blocking glasses, red light therapy devices, and many other products are designed to support your circadian rhythm and help your family sleep and feel better naturally. In our modern world of screens and artificial light, these small shifts make a big difference. Calmer evenings, deep sleep, better focus, and happier moods. I use Bon Charge products every single day, and even my son has his own pair of blue light blocking glasses for evening story time. You can check out all their products at boncharge.com and use code LENAL to save 15% off your purchase.
Right.
Exactly. And sometimes you can even take it back to the grocery store or the farm or the garden, right?
Yep.
Without even the pressure of having it on a table. Yeah, that's such great advice. And I know there's some nutritional deficiencies that are associated with picky eating. Could you mention those as well?
Yeah. Well, the number one is zinc,
Mhm.
right? Zinc is, sort of the pearl that I've learned over the years and, have shared with parents that oftentimes when you are deficient or insufficient in the mineral zinc, it can contribute to so many sensory issues, including having food taste different. So then you develop taste aversions and picky eating, but also other sensory issues. If you have kids who, you never get tags on shirts because they can't stand the tags, or you only buy seamless socks, or maybe they only wear one or two pairs of the same kind of sweatpants or leggings, right? Never wear jeans, right? Or you can't bring them to a public toilet. I mean, they cover their ears. You have to wait to do the vacuum or run the blender when they're out of the house. I mean, those are all sensory issues that are screaming to me zinc. And so we want to focus on zinc rich foods like animal proteins, pumpkin seeds, beans. But then, of course, if you're picky eaters, that's going to be hard. So one of the things that you can do is just try a zinc supplement at low levels. Ideally, what I do in my office is I will actually do a blood test to measure something called a red blood cell zinc, because I want to be a little more guided in how much I give kids, mostly because some kids, I'm shocked at how much they need to normalize their zinc levels. But if you started with a zinc supplement for your child, that can actually improve taste preferences, their auditory sensitivities. And I just remember this one mom who she had heard me on a podcast, or maybe it was one of my social media posts. And so everything I was checking off, gets sick frequently, has eczema, picky eater, not growing as well as you'd like, auditory sensitive, all the things. She's like, oh my gosh, that's my daughter. Right. So she started a zinc supplement, just got a liquid over the counter zinc supplement. And she told me and she was eating maybe like, 3 different foods. So she told me that within a month of starting, her daughter had already tried and accepted and liked 5 new foods. I mean, that is huge.
That
I
is
mean,
huge.
if you are a mom of a picky eater, that's like, oh my gosh, 5, like that's my dream in a year. Right.
Yes.
And so it can be, I mean, there aren't many things in life that are, that are that profound when it comes to shifting supplements that can make that quick of a difference. But zinc is one of them that can.
Wow. Yeah. And I think it's one of the main nutritional deficiencies in children in general that I've heard you and read in the book, right? Because it's so hard for a lot of them to come by. I mean, it is
Yeah.
present in many different foods, but if you're a picky eater, then that list
Yeah.
gets really
That's
low.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
But I've also heard you talk about pumpkin seed powder and how one mom
Yes.
added it to smoothies and it
It's
really
true.
made a difference.
Yeah,
Right?
because I had one, typically we think of zinc levels correlating in our blood, zinc levels in our blood correlating most closely with animal protein intake. But some people don't eat a lot of animal proteins. Oysters are huge in zinc, but that's not the most, kid-friendly food. But this one mom who they weren't vegetarian or vegan, but they just didn't eat a lot of animal proteins. And taking a zinc supplement wasn't moving the needle on getting her child's zinc level up in her blood. And so what she did was she ground up some pumpkin seeds, in your like coffee bean grinder or food processor, whichever one you want, and just sprinkled it everywhere. in her daughter's oatmeal, in baked goods, in salads, in soups. I mean, just snuck it in wherever she could. And it was such a fine powder, it was pretty easy to dissolve. And within 2 months, her zinc levels had gone up so well. I was shocked because I remember checking her blood work and I was like, what did you do? Because she wasn't taking a zinc supplement. I'm like, how did you get her zinc levels up? And she said, that's the only thing she did. So
Wow.
food is really highly absorbable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the nutrients. So ideally we would get what we need from food. Now, if you're giving your child a zinc supplement or you're trying to increase zinc rich foods or both, and their zinc levels are just not going up, then there might be an issue with absorption. So that's another
Mm-hmm.
clear sign that I want to look at your child's gut to see, are they actually digesting and absorbing in the way that they should?
Yeah. And is there ever a concern for having too much zinc?
You can get a little too much zinc, but zinc toxicity is extremely unlikely, especially at the dosages. If you're, for instance, I'm trying to think, like, so the chewable zincs or the liquid zincs, oftentimes you'll get anywhere from 5 to 15 milligrams per dose. If you follow the guidelines recommended by age, there's really going to be virtually no way to overdo it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's where, again, I like to be guided by blood work, but it would be very, very safe to
Okay.
try an over-the-counter zinc supplement. And then if you're not sure, of course, always check with your physician to see, is this okay, especially if they're taking any other medications or supplements. But zinc is one of the most common nutrient deficiencies in
Mm-hmm.
kids and adults for that matter. So it's very important to keep on top of.
Absolutely. And it's so, even for picky eaters, I mean, who you might be concerned with giving a supplement to because perhaps they will refuse to take it. Like, I love this trick of pumpkin seed powder
Yeah,
because you can maybe add it to a smoothie, even ice pops. Like, if all they eat is ice cream, like you can
that's right.
add it to homemade ice cream. It's very, very doable. Let's shift the topic a little bit. There has been a lot of noise lately regarding autism, thanks to RFK Jr. and his claims that we will know what causes it by September. So, do you have a theory here of what could be the cause of autism? And do you believe that children can heal or go into remission with the right treatment?
Yeah. I mean, a couple of things with that. When it comes to functional medicine, one of the things that I think functional medicine, and I love functional medicine, obviously that's a backbone of one of my practices, but I think one of the disservices that functional medicine has really done to patients is to have people think that there usually is just one root cause. There's rarely ever one root cause unless it's a huge poisoning or clearly an infection, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
that triggered everything. But for almost all chronic health concerns, it's a cumulative load of environmental exposures kind of matched with your unique genetics, right? That then can flip some switches and produce health outcomes, poor health
Mm-hmm.
outcomes. And many would say, and I know that there is, a lot of uh, in the neurodiverse world, a lot of pushback against the idea that autism is a disease. And so, what I would say is, however we categorize autism, there are so many behaviors and health concerns that go along with being autistic that as a parent and as a practitioner, a pediatrician, those are what we want to clear. We know that kids on the autism spectrum have a higher risk for seizure disorders, for inflammatory bowel disease like Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, for sensory processing issues, for huge behavioral concerns like aggression. I'm not just talking kind of quirky personalities that are functioning amazingly well and
Mm-hmm.
thriving, right? But and there are kids who really don't have any expressive language capabilities. And so they're not thriving in this world, and that is what I want to address. And I
Mm-hmm.
absolutely think that when we understand some of the underlying biochemical imbalances, the microbiome imbalances, the nutrient deficiencies, mitochondrial concerns that are there, really digging in, with targeted testing, we can find answers to really help course correct many of these behaviors and symptoms of autism that are so problematic.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important to address as well from this very broad view and not just focus on one diagnosis like you've mentioned, because unfortunately our kids have so many comorbidities right now. So there's so many things that we can do. And another low-hanging fruit kind of entry point that we can find to start addressing these concerns, because even though we want to support this neurodiverse personality that a lot of these kids show and this beautiful special way of being, however, a lot of them, they only eat beige foods, and we know that can over time cause a lot of health issues in itself. So it's just a lot of things to think about here as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So the CDC also released new data showing that 1 in 3 teenagers now has pre-diabetes. And that number is staggering, and yet another reflection of our health crisis that we're in right now. So from your perspective, what are some realistic, impactful steps families can take to support better health for their kids?
Yeah. And I want to point out to families and to kids, parents and kids, that the 1 in 3 kids who are now diagnosed with prediabetes, they are not necessarily the kids that we think of as getting diabetes. They're not necessarily obese and sedentary and inactive, right? I have kids in my practice who are athletes. They look very slim and they look fit. And yet when I check their fasting blood work, they have all the signs of prediabetes with high insulins, fasting insulin, and high hemoglobin A1C. And it is startling. And I would say this 1 in 3 number that the CDC is quoting, these are kids who already have elevated hemoglobin A1Cs. What I am seeing is this kind of even this pre-diabetes, which is this high fasting insulin. Hemoglobin A1C still looks normal, but their blood sugar regulation is not normal. And this is really important. And, the biggest culprit for our kids is their sugar intake. I mean, sugar is so sneaky. And of course, a lot of parents listening to this, they know, okay, I shouldn't give my kids candy and too many cakes and too many. I'm talking about sugar hiding in plain sight, in our salad dressings and in protein bars and in foods in bread, gluten-free whole grain bread. I mean, these foods that we think we're making healthier swaps. But then in the end, when we look at the added sugar content, we're loading our kids and ourselves with sugar without even knowing it. Right? A cookie or an ice cream, that's a known thing. But what I want and what I teach kids and parents to do is really read every single food label like a gut hero, look at the added sugar content, and really keep in mind that children 2 to 18 years of age should have no more than 25 grams of added sugar in a day, which equates to about 6 teaspoons. Okay. So I tell my kids are teens now. And so they know, okay, 25 grams or 6 teaspoons. When they look at a label, like let's say they go to boba tea with their friends and they want to get a boba, the lowest sugar boba is still going to be something like 35 grams of added sugar in a day. That's about, 9 teaspoons. Right? So they're already over their daily allotment. And that doesn't include what's maybe in their smoked ham deli slices and their sandwich bread and their organic jam, right? I mean, all these, it just all adds up. And so for me, I completely understand. It is not realistic as a parent to say, don't ever have any of these, because how many parents walk around with a Starbucks Frappuccino, and how many parents love a bowl of ice cream here and there? It's just that we're doing it too often. And what I'm seeing with kids is a sneaky increase where they start having maybe one Starbucks drink with their friends once a week. And then as they get older, after school, they're all walking downtown together. And then all of a sudden it becomes a daily thing. But I literally just saw this one young woman. She's 15. I mean, my daughter's 15 and she's plays volleyball. She's athletic. She's slim. And I was floored to see her fasting insulin at very high levels, higher than normal. I mean, I look to see, are they kind of bumping up, getting on the higher end of normal? She was outright abnormal, right? And we will meet and have a discussion and just kind of go through where is this sugar sneaking in? It's really,
Yeah.
it's through no fault of our own, because the food manufacturers don't want us to realize that. I'm just trying to think of what things, are like the spaghetti sauce that we're having has added sugar, or all these things that if we're not looking at the label,
Yes.
we're not thinking sugar, right? We do think
Mm.
sugar when it comes to candy and cakes and cookies, but we're not thinking sugar when it comes to salad dressing, or
Mhm.
other condiments, or even protein bars. I always have kids look at protein bars, because a lot of middle schoolers and high schoolers are like, oh, I'll just have a protein bar as a snack, right? But some of them are just junk with either too much added sugar, or what I would say even worse is the artificial sweeteners. I mean, those are not any better. It is not the solution to go to sucralose or acesulfame potassium or saccharin. The solution is just to lower our sugar intake so that our taste buds don't want as much sugar.
And what do you think about like stevia and monk fruit, which are often used in these like health brands and health conscious brands? And I feel like they're being added into a lot of these things as a substitute for sugar. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that they can be okay in moderation. There's actually some evidence that monk fruit may have some benefits for the gut microbiome, but they are much sweeter than
Hmm.
sugar, as these sugar replacements, and they don't necessarily raise our blood sugar, but they don't change our desire for sweet. So that's
Right.
that's a fallacy, right? I think when they were first coming out with these artificial sweeteners and sugar substitutes, the thought was, oh, well, this is going to reduce our risk for diabetes because it's going to reduce our intake of sweets. And it doesn't necessarily, it has not been shown to reduce risks of diabetes later on in life. So I
Okay.
just, I think overall, just really getting back to the sweetness of real foods, fruit in so many cultures is dessert, right?
Hmm.
And so really training our taste buds and our bodies to just not want as much sugar, that is the real key in getting this diabetes epidemic under control.
I agree. And even talking about picky eaters, if you do have kids who just love to snack and this is their main calories for today, there's things that you can swap at home. Maybe instead of giving them the chocolate chip cookies, you bake them at home and you put less sugar in
That's
there and
right.
then slowly do less and less and less until they get used to this different type of flavor profile. But there's a lot of things you can do even in that case.
Yeah. And it is, for infants and babies. So babies under 2 should have 0 grams of added sugar, right? But it's sneaking in. In fact, I was really alarmed when I saw this, this ad for this organic Stonyfield Yo Baby yogurt
Yes.
in different strawberry flavors, blueberry flavors, whatever it is. And it says #1 pediatrician recommended baby yogurt, right?
Wow.
So, and before I really was aware of the microbiome and sugars, I don't think I would have looked at the label, but I looked at the
Yeah.
label, and that canister of baby yogurt had almost a teaspoon per serving. Like, your baby should have no grams of added sugar. So
Mm-mm.
what's the solution? Buy whole milk, plain Greek yogurt, and just add some real strawberry puree or real blueberry puree. They don't need the added sugars.
Yes. These days when your child refuses everything you make and you just want them to have something nourishing, that's when I grab Signals. It's a real food meal replacement shake made with organ meats, minerals, and nutrients that support kids' biology, not just fill them up. It's rich in iron, zinc, and B vitamins, the building blocks for growth, focus, and strong immune systems. And it's great for the gut. And the best part? Nate calls it his ice cream shake. That's how delicious it is. And as a mom, it feels amazing to know he's getting what his body truly needs without the fight. You can learn more at feedyoursignals.com, and don't forget to use Lena10 at checkout for 10% off your purchase. That's exactly what I did, because same brand. I picked it up one day in the store when I was shopping for my son Nate, and I was just floored. It's like, oh my goodness, it's hiding
I know.
everywhere.
Yeah.
It's a big issue. So, in your book, you discuss a concept you call whole child resilience. What do you mean by that?
So one of the things that we as parents are, it's just as moms, it's just, innate to us that we want to keep our kids safe and happy, right? But that often means in the end that we are kind of bubble wrapping our kids and shielding them from upset, disappointment, frustration, and all the things that really do create growth and mindset resilience in our kids, right? So, many adults have heard of resilience in the terms of, okay, the gift of failure, let your kids fail and bounce back from it, right? But we have to apply that same thing to them from a physical and immune system standpoint, right? Because the same thing, just like mentally, we learn with every knockback, we overcome and we gain more confidence for the next time. Well, even with getting sick or exposed to, I'll say sick first because it's mostly like viruses and colds, right? Where parents are the hand sanitizer and don't touch anything, and I don't want my kids ever to get sick. However, every time your child gets sick, it trains their immune system, and then I always recommend more integrative tools like herbs and essential oils to help your kids recover faster. And then every time they recover completely, their immune system actually retains that memory and learns how to do it better the next time. So this is the idea of building resilience. It's not about shielding your kids from everything. It's about laying the foundations so that whatever they encounter, they can overcome it quickly and completely and be stronger for the next time.
Absolutely. That makes me think of back in the day when I was growing up in Poland. I would spend the whole day outside, play in the dirt, do everything. And I feel like we're shielding our kids from that. I mean, the environment is very different now, but in terms of like just getting dirty, I feel like it's no longer a thing, right? It's a lot of it is just like, let me get my hand sanitizer out. Let's clean your hands. Like, I think we overdo it a little bit as well.
Well, and hand sanitizer has been shown to disrupt your gut microbiome, right? And just being too clean. Yeah. I mean, we know that is, conjectured to be part of what's called the hygiene hypothesis, where we've just become too clean and too sanitary. And we actually need exposure to the microbes around us to train our gut microbiome and train our immune system. And so if we don't give our kids that opportunity when they're little, it doesn't train their immune systems and may even increase the risk then of things like eczema and asthma and allergies, which are also very high in kids.
I really believe there's so much wisdom in the way previous generations cared for health, like our grandmothers and great grandmothers. So what's one piece of health or wellness wisdom from past generations that from your family that you're intentionally preserving and passing down to your kids?
Wow. I mean, I think that for me, even in the busyness of our schedules and for now, my kids are in high school. And so, I mean, sometimes their sports practices are 7 to 8:30 and family meals during the week are just not happening that much. Right. Mm-hmm. But it's for me, one thing that was very important to instill in my kids is the skill set and also the enjoyment of cooking, right? I think that there's so many benefits to learning how to cook and then having at least one family meal a week. I mean, even for me, my mom was a busy OBGYN. Her office was attached to our house. I mean, sometimes she would work until 9 o'clock seeing patients. But she always carved out time, at dinner time where she had no patients and she came in and had dinner with us. And then she would go back and see patients. So for me, having family dinner time as often as we can is very important. We're sitting there, no screens, we're chit-chatting, we're catching up on the day, or maybe just running through whatever the happenings are. Oftentimes that's our time to kind of regroup and look at the schedule for the next day, right? And then cooking. I mean, some of my best memories growing up was sitting in my living room with the screen door wide open, looking at our backyard and just, making like sheets and sheets of Korean pot stickers, which are called mandu. Right.
Oh, that sounds so good.
And then like folding them and just sitting there. And sometimes we would be, just even sometimes in silence and sometimes we would chat, but there was just something so peaceful about that. And you have your hands in the food, you're making it. And It's just, exactly what the ingredients are. And, it tastes just so much better when you can make it with that intention.
Absolutely. Oh, that's beautiful. And it's such an important skill, not only for our health, but I think for our nervous system and our microbiome and everything else. And it's so basic, right? Because you don't need to know how to cook 100 things. You can learn how to cook 5 things that are going to make a difference in your life.
Yeah.
So this is the question I like to ask everyone at the end of my interview. So if you could share just one piece of advice with parents who want to raise healthier, more resilient kids in this world, what would it be?
Every time I think about this question, it's probably shifts depending on what's been going on, in my life and the world around me. But I would say right now, the biggest piece of advice would be, just to move forward, and it's progress over perfection. Like that is really the key. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things we could be doing, but we don't need to do all of them right now. Right. So you just pick one thing, move forward, then you pick the next. When you start really on this holistic health journey, it can feel very overwhelming. Like, oh my gosh, I have to clear all of the cleaners under my cabinet. I have to change all of our body, hair care products. I have to change all of the food. We have to, change our bedtime routine. I mean, all of the things, and it can feel really overwhelming. And so it's just take it one day at a time, one step at a time, and expect that you're going to make some mistakes, and that those mistakes are going to be learning opportunities. Because as we go forward and we make these mistakes and then we move forward, our kids see us doing that too. So we just keep going one day at a time.
Yeah, that's beautiful. There's power in that, because that sets up that domino effect, right? Of other things coming into place and things shifting in the right direction. So what are some ways parents can work with you? Are you accepting any new patients, or are you maybe launching a parents-based membership?
I'm not, unfortunately, taking new patients right now, which is why I have a Healthy Kids, Happy Kids practitioner membership, because I would love to have, a huge community of integrative pediatric practitioners to care for kids across the country, across the world. And then I also am soon launching a Healthy Kids, Happy Kids parent membership, where they can listen to master classes taught by me and special guests on different holistic integrated pediatric topics, resources, live Q&As, my AI clone to ask me questions any time of day. So I'm really excited for that. It's a resource that I think will be of value for so many families, especially who don't have a holistic pediatrician near them, and also a community. That's probably the most important aspect of it, because a lot of us can feel alone on this journey, not a lot of family members or friends who may be like-minded, other parents at our kids' schools. And so, this having a community, which is not Facebook, it's housed in Mighty Networks. So a safe, secure community where parents can get together and connect and really support each other.
I've been in the practitioner membership from the beginning, and there's so much value in there in terms of how much you learn even from just one lecture. So I can't recommend it enough. I know it's going to be fabulous.
Thank you.
Do you know when it's launching yet?
It's launching in August.
Okay, soon.
Very soon.
So anybody interested, definitely, if you can, sign up. It's worth it.
Thank you.
Well, Dr. Song, thank you so much for coming on. It was such a great conversation. I learned a ton, and I hope everybody listening did as well. And if anybody wanted to follow you online, where could they find you?
So the best place is my website, healthykidshappykids.com, and also on Instagram, which is healthykids_happykids.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in today and being a part of the Livin'Sky community. I hope you learned something new and inspiring that you can apply in your life right away. If you have a minute, please leave us a 5-star review. It really helps us grow and for other parents like you to find us. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you listen to your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Sending you and your family lots of love. I'll catch you in the next episode. Thanks so much for listening to the Livin'Sky Podcast. If this episode resonated, please leave a quick 5-star review or share it with another parent who'd love it too. It really helps more families find the support that they need. And don't forget to join my newsletter at linalivinsky.com for more tips and free guides. Sending a little sunshine to your kitchen today. See you next time.